Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Witches the Moon. I am your Monday hostess, Natalie. This week's topic is raising kids in paganism or sharing your traditions with your children. So, a lot of you out there may not have kids yet. Please don't think this video doesn't apply to you and your families. You could be influencing another child that's not related to you, or even a niece or a nephew or something like that. So, children are naturally curious. When you live a pagan lifestyle, when you are living your life authentically, and you're happy especially, children are very curious. They want to know why you are so happy, what makes you happy. And so children will often ask questions, and they're very good observers. They pay attention to what you do. So by just doing your natural witchy thing, children are going to pick up on that, and they're going to follow suit. Now, if you are raising children, there are certain aspects of the craft that maybe you don't feel are appropriate for them. And by all means, there are certain things that you can explain in a way that's appropriate to every child. When I was Catholic and I was raising my daughters, I did not raise my children pagan, clearly, because at the time when my children were young and in their formative years, I was in the throes of trying really hard to be a good Christian. And I was finding it very difficult. And my children could see my struggle, and they knew that I believed at the time that this was right, but they could clearly see the cognitive dissonance that was going on in my life at the time. And it didn't ring true with them. And so consequently, they weren't interested in following that path either. And a lot of times, I think when things don't ring true with us, we try to shove things down kids' throats because we're so afraid that we're not living it right, that they're not going to want to live it. And they don't, because they can see through you. Children are not stupid. But when you're living a pagan lifestyle and it's a part of who you are, children are going to pick up on that. So by just observing you and observing your practices and seeing what you do, children are going to be naturally curious about what makes you happy and what makes you do the things that you're doing. So they're going to ask you questions. Don't be afraid to answer those questions. And I'm going to tell you that, although you don't necessarily want to go into certain details on certain things, lying to children or trying to sugarcoat things or kind of keep things a secret isn't going to serve them well either. I have found that it does best to explain things to children in as blunt a manner as you can, using words that are appropriate to their age level and terms that are appropriate to their age level, and not giving more information than they're ready to process. So in terms of how can you include your children in your pagan practice? Well, because paganism, and Wicca particularly, has grown so much in the past few years, there are a lot of fabulous ideas out there that you can do to encourage children on your path or to let them learn about your path and, kind of inform them without shoving it down their throat. Some things to start with very, very young children are look for stories. Myths, a lot of fairy legends have magic in them. And I think that makes us naturally curious about magic. How does that work exactly? So reading them fairy tales and myths of different cultures, you can find books. If you look on Amazon or if you look online and you just Google it, you can find goddess stories. So things like that where they can start to understand that there's a god and a goddess, and then you can take your time to explain that to them. Well, there are some faiths that believe that there's only one god, but we believe in a god and a goddess because we feel there must be balance. When you look at nature, you see male and female. Even in plants, you see male and female. Very few species of life on this planet is asexual or non, either both male or female. Okay, I don't want to get into a political kind of thing with that, but even trees are male and female. So things like that. Stories like the Stregonona series by Tommy DePaola, which is based on legends from his native Italy. When you read those books, Stregonona always teaches the villagers some lesson through her magic. Norman Bridwell, many of you may know him as the author of the Clifford books. He wrote a series called The Witch Next Door. And she does a couple odd things that we don't do, clearly, but I mean, it's imaginative, and children like it, and they pick up on that. So finding stories about witches in which they are portrayed in a positive light is not impossible. There are stories and shows, children's shows like The Worst Witch. That was a really cute movie back in the 80s, and the British recently redid it as a TV series. It's on Netflix, so that might be an interesting place to start. Having them make salt dough, something that's very simple, even simpler, getting them involved in meditation with you, taking them to the crystal shop. If you live here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, there's the Rock Barrel. There's a crystal shop in San Antonio. I mean, just Google crystal shops and metaphysical shops and take them shopping. See what they're drawn naturally to and let them ask you questions about different things. Notice what crystals they pick up. Maybe buy them a crystal. Give them a little bag when there's one of those big rock things. Sometimes you'll go in, like I know at the Rainforest Cafe, they have a big thing at the front that's got rocks in it, and they can buy them by the bag. So letting them select things that they're naturally drawn to, and then helping them discover what they've selected and the characteristics of that. Teaching them about the chakra system is a simple way of getting them started. Getting them involved in meditation on a daily basis is an excellent way to introduce the craft. Another thing that you can do is let them keep a Year of the Wheel journal. Now, if they're really little, you can get the Pagan Kids Activity Book, and I believe Amber Kay is the one who did that. But it follows the Year of the Wheel and has different activities specifically for children. So again, that's the Pagan Kids Activity Book. Getting them, if they're older, obviously getting them a book that's basic on witchcraft. I don't know that going with Big Blue is a great choice for kids, but Silver Raven Wolf, and I know there's a lot of people that argue against her that she's Fluffy Bunny, but there's others. You can get the Modern Witches book by Alexander Skye. That's a good one too, Alexander Skye. Things like that. Take them outside and get them involved in nature. Plant a garden. I mean, there are so many countless activities. Getting them outside and observing the moon of the moon and charging your crystals and showing them how to care for those things. Making a wand. Kids love to make wands. They love to use their imagination. So getting them to use their imagination is the first step to getting them to create their own magic. Getting them to believe in the power of their imagination and in the power of their own mind and their own words. That is how you get a child involved on the right path and get them encouraged to find what calls to them. They may not always stick with paganism. They may be called to a different path, and we need to be prepared to accept that as parents if that's the case, because we can't live our children's lives for them. So, a little bit of a technical hiccup there. I love it when Windows decides to update in the middle of you doing something even though you tell it not to. As I was saying, we can't live our children's lives for us, so don't expect them to necessarily always be drawn to a pagan path, but by living your most authentic life, your genuineness and your authenticity is going to naturally draw your child to that path. And of course, sharing your path with your child is just one way of making sure that you put them on some sort of a spiritual path, because I really do believe, based on my studies when I was in the PhD program for child development, religiosity really made a difference for children, and they need something that they can hold on to. So if you are interested in some specific pagan books, I found a list of workbooks and activities and parenting books. I've already mentioned Amber Kay's The Pagan Kids Activity Book. There's also Rain Hill's Growing Up Pagan, a workbook for Wiccan families. So that's primarily Wiccan, but if you're not Wiccan, there's still good ideas to be had. I believe that there is some good to be gained from every religion that is there as far as spiritual practices. Maybe not following that religion per se, but your spiritual practices. So, you can always explain the differences in your beliefs to your kids, but the core beliefs tend to be very much the same. There's another, Kristen Madden has one called Pagan Parenting, Spiritual, Magical, and Emotional Development of the Child. Kate Johnson and Mara Shaw have Celebrating the Great Mother, a handbook of earth-honoring activities for parents and children. And Deborah Jackson has With Child, Wisdom and Traditions for Pregnancy, Birth, and Motherhood, so that may be a good start if you're a new mom. And Ashley Nogay has Raising Witches, Teaching Wiccan Faith to Children, Family Wicca Revised and Expanded. And then Lorna Tedder has a few as well, and there are more. So by all means, get out there and explore what resources are available to you, and just be yourself. Your kids are going to ask questions and want to be involved. So consider other various activities. There's so many. I may just even expand this video and do a video for my personal channel on the same topic, because I've got a million ideas that could really involve children in pagan practice without having to go overboard for anything that may not necessarily be appropriate. So thank you again for watching. We appreciate your support, and we'll see you next week.